All right, so for a third example here, we are gonna go over something really cool. So previously we have created a lot of attributes. We have talked about color, we have talked about normals, we have talked about ID, you name it. And usually we use an attribute create, the actual node called attribute create. And that's all fine and good, like that works fine. Let's say we want to create, I don't know, a color. We put CD, we put it to a vector, and we put the value to, I don't know, 1. We have red. There you go. But there is a simpler way and a much faster way than to use a separate node. In this example, I'm going to show you guys how to create attributes inside of the VOP, the attribute VOP. So let's dive in here and have a look. So as you remember, we have a bunch of attributes on this side of attributes coming in. And on this side we have for outputting. But what if we don't have a color that we can output from this side to that side? Well, we can actually create it ourselves. So what I did here is I added a constant. I put it to a vector, 3 floats vector, and I put the first value to 1 and added it to 0, 0. I put the constant name to CD, but that's not important. That doesn't matter really. And I pipe that into the CD. And if I disconnect that, you can see that they are white here. If I connect it to the CD, I output this as an attribute to all the points and they become red. So we have pretty much created a CD attribute. It actually didn't even exist before, and I can prove that by disconnecting it and going to the geometry spreadsheet. We can see here that let me disconnect these. We can see here that only the position exists. But if I now use this constant that is not an attribute at all, is its values, and I pipe them to the CD, we now have a CD attribute. Same with the normal. If I have a constant here that I have put floats, 3 floats and to a vector, and I put the value to 1 in Y, I pipe that to the normal. We now have a normal attribute. And we can also create other attributes that are not in this geometry VOP output. Because there's like only 5 of them, right? The most common ones. There's a lot of other ones like age, p-scale, blah blah, you name it, that we also can export, but not using this one. Instead, we have to do it by ourselves. So how do we do this? Well, we can use this node called bind export. This will basically bind the value to an attribute that we define. So how do we do this? Well, okay, so we have a constant here. I'm going to keep it on the geometry spreadsheet view so we can actually see what's happening. We have constant here, set it to 1, a float. We pipe that to our bind export. As we can see now, we have a p-scale. The p-scale is set to 1. So what happened? Well, in our bind export, we have to set a name for the attribute. Usually the attribute we want to export is actually predefined and only have a name. So make sure you use the names that are predefined. Because the copy node will use the p-scale and some other things use the age, some other use the density. Like it's very useful to know the attribute names in advance, so you know what to name them. But p-scale is pretty common, so name it p-scale, put it to float, and that's it. Your attributes are exported. So what if we want to use these ones, the actual predefined attributes here, and export a new attribute? So let's say we want to use these points. All these points have a PT num, right? As you remember, if you pick this, yeah, they have a PT num. And the PT num is actually here in the geometry VOP global. How can we use this PT num to create an ID attribute? That is too really easy. All we need to do is, I'm going to move this down a little bit. We need to drop down a bind export node like that. We can take the PT num, pipe it to here, put this name to ID, and put it to an integer. That's it. The attribute is created, and we now have an ID, as you can see here. And this is the same method as doing it up here. So let's go to the point. They don't have any attribute, ID attribute. We can add a attribute create node. We pipe it, we visualize it. We put this to @ptnum. We put this to ID, and we put it to integer, and now we have an ID. It's the same thing, but it's different methods of creating the actual attribute. And I do prefer making it actually in DevOps, because here it's like more visual and it's easier to change and easier to modify. So yeah, so become friends with these, because they're really useful and you will be using them a lot. The bind export, how to export attributes. All right, okay, thank you for this. See you next tutorial.